Hi, and today's video is going to be about long run, but it's going to be like a kind of, I put in the title intermediate because I want to kind of give some tips on what you can do with long runs, probably further in a training cycle. And you may be doing it for a half marathon, much more likely for a marathon training, and where you can have some variance of pace, what the benefits for you as a runner can be, how you can do this, and how you can do it in a way that not only benefits your running, but you get better recovery from it. So I'm going to be sharing with you in a minute a screen share where we're going to go through, I think about 3 runs that I've done over the last month and a half, 2 months, where I've done, I think off the top of my head, 16, 18 and 20 miles, where I've done some sort of finishing fast. And also I put some repetitions into my running to kind of vary. Now, reason I put intermediate on this video is if you haven't built up yet that foundation of endurance in your running, then I wouldn't recommend what I'm going about to show you, because think of it like a house. Your endurance, your aerobic capacity is the kind of foundations. Now, depending on how solid that is, when you build other things like speed and intensity onto that, will depend on how that house stands up. So what I'm about to kind of share with you is not that intense, but if you haven't built that, then it's not the best use of your training. So I wouldn't put this early on in a training cycle, even for an intermediate runner. You know, you'd still be probably at that pace where you're building up the mileage. You're probably more utilizing the math method, if you like, lots of zone one, zone two running for using heart rate, keeping it at a lower heart rate, doing that. Once that's down though, and you're into that latter part of your training, and you can look at a 14-mile run and look at it with some level of confidence, then perhaps adding in some variance in pace in the ways I'm about to show you can give benefits to you physically. It can give benefits to you mentally. And that's really what I wanted to share. So if you can take that caveat on, depending on where you are, because obviously YouTube's a broad church. I don't know exactly where you are with your training. That would be a wise way of looking at this. But if you're interested, then we're just going to move over to the screen share, and I'm going to talk you through these 3 runs and how I did them, what were the benefits, and what you could do to get similar benefit.
So, welcome to this part of the video where we're going to look at let me just move this out of the way, some runs and explain why using some sort of pace within your long runs can just vary. And like I said at the beginning of the video, this is not something that you tend to do sort of very early on in your training. Either if it's your first marathon, you'd build that aerobic base, or even if you're quite used to doing long runs, it's still something that would be later on in that midway, I would say, where you're starting to get into longer runs. And yet again, it would depend on your times, because for me, I get to a point probably midway in my training where I'm starting to do 15, 16, even 20 miles. Some people in the training may only get to that point later on, but this can be used, as I'm going to show, with shorter long runs, if that makes sense. So here's a 16-mile run, and I picked it up in the last 4. So let's start with this one. So let's have a look. So you can sort of see that I've started really easy in those zone 2s. And then you can see I've picked it up the last kind of, I don't know, like last 20%. It's roughly an 80-20 rule. 80% of the run, very easy, and last 20% push. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly like, it could be the last 10%, could be the last 15%. Why do you do this, or why would you do this? Well, it serves two purposes on either end of the run. It serves a purpose of training your brain to be able to pick the pace up when you're tired. It also gives you confidence this end that you can pick your pace up later on in a run. But I think it also gives you something else, which is being very mindful of not going off too fast. Now, these aren't race paces. These are training paces. Never confuse training with racing. It's not the same thing. We know that in our brain, but the reality is some people do get the two very, very confused. But by knowing that I had to go faster, I was mindful of keeping this very, very steady pace throughout. That enabled me to pick the pace up in the last stretch. Now, of course, in a race day scenario, you would be going faster than this. Whatever your training pace, you're going to be probably going race pace, obviously. But it still trains your brain to not get dragged into that adrenaline rush when you've got, particularly when you've got people going past you. It's so easy to go their pace and not your own. And by knowing that you're going to probably pick the pace up, or you've done runs where you've done this, then it's much easier to run your own race. So let's have a look at this. This is a 20-mile run. If we go to the pace analysis here, something else. So yet again, started really, really, really steady, kept it steady all the way through, and then picked it up that last 15 or 20%. Gives you a lot of confidence, but it also does something else. Look, I mean, I know this is all personal. I don't run to heart rate as such. I've got a chest strap, a Wahoo chest strap. So you can see it keeps your heart rate really, really low. But even when you do start to pick up the pace, so you can start to see here at about mile 14, I start to pick the pace up. But my heart rate doesn't rocket really till that last mile when I'm running near just under a 6.5 minute mile at the end. So I think also it has a great opportunity for you to really utilize your heart rate. So this brings me to my last point. How do you know what zone you're in? So when you start, if you want to be in that zone, probably start out in zone 1, move into a zone 2. You'd even know that by all these things: your pace, if you've set up your zones. If you want to do it conversationally, if you and I were out running, you should be able to chat away with me more or less as as I'm talking to you now. You can utilize heart rate. And to be honest, I kind of do a bit of all of those. I mainly go by feel. And then I look at the watch and I'm just looking for spikes in my heart rate, really, because say I'm tired or I'm coming down with something, that can be a sign that, yeah, I've really got to slow this particular run down. It doesn't mean every run. It's just sometimes runs can be similar, but not the same. You can be more tired, you can be more stressed, you can be more ill. And those are factors that you can look at. Another way of utilizing the long run, making it more interesting, is to have mini reps throughout it, variance in pace. And this was a 16-mile run. And as you can see, half a mile warm up. And then I had 14 reps. So quarter of a mile in zone 3, 3/4 of a mile in zone 2. So you can see from the pace analysis here, you can see that these reps. So I ease myself into these. And the great thing about this is really about taking that zone 2 rest. and then going through the gears, having that gear to go up to. And this can be quite challenging. It's not something that I would do early on or if I'm not used to it, but it's a tremendous, gives you, you're running tremendous strength and flexibility, because you're doing it in this way where you're having this kind of rest mile, a 3/4 of a mile, you can really concentrate on being in that zone 2. And it really makes a long run really interesting because you're being challenged the whole way along. And you can really start to see how your endurance is building up, how you maintain that. And what I did was a bit naughty here. I got to the last part, and I actually combined. So the last 20%, no, it wasn't quite 20%, probably 15% of the run, I just put my foot down a little bit on that last bit just to pick it up. So it mentally gives you great flexibility. It really, the neuro connection between your brain and your muscles, the kind of variability in running is great. So this is another way that probably for more runners that have done quite a lot of long runs, have got that foundation down. I used to say running 16, 17, 18 miles fairly comfortably. You can have the variation. And remember, the pace isn't the point, the zone is the point. So, whatever pace I'm doing it at, somebody else could do this very same run, but they would have their zone 2. Their zone 2 would be their zone 2. Their zone 3 would be their own zone 3. So that's a great thing of running to feel and zones. It transfers to other runners. It doesn't matter if you're a 4.5-hour marathon runner or if you're a 3.5 marathon runner. The zone is still applicable. The effort is still applicable. The pace will be different based on where you are at and the type of runner you are. But the ability to do this type of run, once you have that base down, you've got to be able to, I would say, fairly be confident to be able to run 15 plus miles. Then you can have the variance and speed that just gives your running that edge. And I think on race day gives you the confidence that I don't know really how to explain it, but lots of runners run out too fast. I've done this when I've lacked most of my confidence. When I feel the least confident that I'm going to hit a time, it's almost like, well, I'll run it quicker at the first edge and then hang on in there. Well, anybody that's run a marathon knows that doesn't end well. Where you're doing this kind of running, apart from the muscular side that it helps, the speed side, I really think it helps you on a much deeper level to have confidence in your running, to start out slower, know that you can pick it up. And because of that, your running becomes a lot more controlled because of it. So hopefully these little long run variations, one, make your running long runs more interesting. 2, help you make you a stronger long distance runner and a better race day runner. But I repeat it for about the 3rd or 4th time. This is not the sort of thing to do on your first rodeo, on your first long run. Get that base down, do your steady zone 2 runs, 10, 12, 14 miles. Get plenty of those under your belt, and then start looking at this kind of variation on your long runs. Hope this has helped. Hope you're enjoying the channel. If you are, please feel free to give us a like or subscribe to the channel. Bye for now.